Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sports Hut podcast. As you can see tonight, we're depleted in numbers. Shahan decided he was going to break another chair. Unfortunately, did a wee back roll into Mitchell, who decided to fall down another set of stairs. And Bruce thought it looked so much fun, he would join in the fun and fall down another set of stairs onto some hard wooden floors that were not laminated. But yeah, an interesting week in football, especially with the recent events of the Euros, of which we're going to go to Martin to take us through the unfortunate scenes we saw in last night's game between Denmark and Finland.
Aye, so this is a difficult subject. I usually like to have a laugh and a joke about things. Christian Eriksen, I think we all watched the game with as the throne was taken. He just collapsed. You saw the video footage of straight away his face just sort of just looked like there was nothing there, and quite obvious pretty early on that there was an issue. I think the first thing you've got to say is how well the medical team's done. Referee, within the first couple of seconds, signalled everybody on. I think everybody realised there was something wrong. Went over, did everything that they could. So first of all, to concentrate on the medical side of stuff. I think the main reason he's survived this, I don't know how bad it was, if he didn't get medical treatment, if he would have survived if he had done it in his house or anything. Let's face it, he's probably done it in one of the safest environments in the world, apart from being in a hospital. If he had had a heart attack like that anywhere else, his chances would have been depleted. Obviously, I don't know how bad a heart attack was. My medical expertise goes as far as doing a couple of first aid certificates, which again is something that's extremely important. I think that it should be. It's more and more getting done at schools for people to have first aid certificates and be able to help in circumstances like this. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that the medical staff done that well. It's my belief that they've done that well because of what happened in 2012 with Fabrice Muamba. Both me and spoke to James I'd watched that game when Fabrice Muamba collapsed on pitch. And since then, there was a lot of things that had to come in place to stop it happening again. There was also another instance before that with Phil O'Donnell. That was 2007. He died on the pitch. What do we feel about how the medical teams and everybody else done?
I thought,
James?
Well, the medical team were very quick in their response, but I think their quick reaction was because of Anthony Taylor halting the play right away. Yeah, he's been criticised many times by English football fans for his refereeing decision, but that was probably the most important decision that he's made on a football pitch, and he got it spot on.
Yeah.
So I think he deserves all the credit. And then I think as well, the Danish players, Schmeichel and Simon Kjaer, the captain, as well. But the way that they stood in front of the medical team, treating Eriksen to give him some privacy in one of the most public areas that you can get, just showed the respect that they have for him, but also the common decency. And that just allowed the medics to do what they're trained to do, and they did very well in doing their job.
So I think it was pretty obvious that the Danish team did that more for the fans, to stop the fans watching it. Obviously, there was a lot of outcry on social media about the BBC's coverage of it. I personally saw Christian Eriksen receiving CPR after a couple of minutes through the legs of the Danish players who were on the pitch. That's not something that should be on television, is it?
No, not at
Gavin?
all. I do think it's one of these things. The BBC also obviously say that they don't have any control over the cameras, and I get that within a certain extent. In the foreign stadiums, it is difficult to control over what is aired, but at that stage, BBC need to make a decision to cut to the studio and be the presenters who are actually with you in that moment, not seeing the images, especially if football is a sport that's applicable and interesting for a lot of ages. I mean, all generations. So there's bound to be children sitting watching that and seeing those scenes that they shouldn't have to at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. I think between that or watching the CPR and again, you can't speak highly enough, like James says, of Kjaer and Schmeichel, who are both then over at Christian Eriksen's girlfriend, making sure she was okay. But again, cameras picked that up and we watched that as well. The whole world watched a woman break down because she thought her boyfriend was dying on the pitch. So first thing I want to talk about is really the coverage of it. Second thing for medical teams. James, what's your thoughts on what we saw and what we should have saw?
It was a clear breach of Ofcom rules. It explicitly states in Ofcom, who regulate TV footage, that personal tragedies should not be viewed on sporting events. So the BBC broke Ofcom rules and will be punished because of it. They do not control the cameras. I take that on board, but I think that is an argument that is being used because of people's ignorance on how TV actually runs. They have control of the editorial decision, and they should have cut the feed. Maybe not even go back to the studio straight away, because when they did, you could see how emotionally it hit Alex Scott in particular, but all of the panelists were in shock.
Definitely.
So even just going on to a different program, a different feed, they could have done that, and they should have something prepared off the off chance. And the BBC say, well, we can't just cut a program. Well, 2 months ago,
dead for the restart.
Yeah, well, two months ago, at the death of Prince Philip, they cut the cameras to break the news, because that's BBC protocol. They can cut the camera to go to this channel, so they can cut programs. I think the BBC were very poor. The commentator, I must say, did a very good job. I think Jonathan Pierce.
Yes.
He coped with it very well. And I thought Alex Scott spoke very well afterwards. I think all of them spoke well. She stood out. But the editorial team should have the rule book thrown at them, because that should not have been viewed.
Do you think that was down to an informative point of view, James, that they're wanting to, obviously, the viewers are going to be sitting there going, oh my God, what's happening? We were obviously messaging back and forth, asking if there was any updates, if anyone heard anything. Do you think that was from an informative point of view, but they were like, well, we need to try and keep everyone up to date that everything is okay? Of course, at that point, they had no idea. But
what are you going to be updated with? The guy's getting CPR on the pitch. He's not going to just say, oh, he's fine. He's obviously going to need extensive medical treatment. And I think it's as soon as he collapsed and they zoomed into his eyes, and I'm not blaming them for that, because
that happened at the time. Aye.
Yeah, as soon as you saw his eyes, you knew something was up, and they should have been cutting the feed pretty quickly after that. But 9 minutes of zooming in to his getting treatment and zooming into the face of his girlfriend, does it give the guy some privacy? Like, this is how
much of Fabrice Nwamba can you remember? Because my memories of it were basically you couldn't see anything. It was I'm sure they showed a replay as it happened to sort of see that nobody was there, and basically say, well, we don't know what was. They showed the one replay, realised how bad it was, and then no replays were shown. Nothing was shown there. Everything, there was pictures of the fans being concerned and stuff, but I can't remember watching CPR
two examples come to my head for that. Moamba, I can't remember seeing any treatment on the pitch.
No.
I remember
Nice,
seeing pictures in newspapers and social media. But two examples. One, Champions League final 2019, Liverpool v Real Madrid. Topless streaker, female streaker, comes on, camera feeds cut immediately. But the second one, and it's more linked to this, is Eduardo, the Arsenal player who broke his leg against Birmingham. And they made the editorial decision, Sky, that the leg break was so bad that they couldn't show any replay. So if they can make an editorial decision for that, but
yes.
then
and there's been a few. Was
CPR.
it not?
It's the BBC just got it wrong.
Right, so I think that's enough about the sort of BBC side of things. I think we can all agree what mistakes they made, and hopefully they learn from it. Hopefully there's nothing like this happens again. But in this sort of the way football is, obviously athletes taking it as far as they can. I'm sure after Phil O'Donnell, there was more screening of these possibilities, because he was different. He was I'm sure he had a hole in heart, a vascular problem that was not known at the time. But if it had been known, he wouldn't have been allowed to play. Whereas Eriksen was a cardiac arrest. So the next thing is obviously talk about the players and what they've done. The team standing in unity around the player. You can see some of them facing towards him, some of them didn't want to see. You can see how emotional they were, how difficult it was. And we've already commented on how the leadership of between Schmeichel and Kjaer. Obviously Schmeichel, not that long ago, he had to be stopped from rushing into a burning helicopter with his owner, his family on that. Pretty traumatic experiences for that a lot of players won't have to go through for these players. But you can see that the leadership in those two, and hopefully on social media anyway, that there's quite a lot of people speaking very highly of them. Is there anything you want to say on that?
I think it's been UEFA have helped themselves out as well by sitting saying that obviously it's a tragic event and that they're offering full support to any fans who want to contact the players of both Denmark and Finland, as well as the coaching staff of both teams. So I think they've helped themselves out by saying that's available. Same with Denmark, they've came out and said that they will offer as much support as possible to the players and staff who've had to witness that. Because of course, what a lot of people are forgetting is that there's a relationship between the players, especially at a big tournament. They're all coming together and they're spending a lot of time together. So it is quite a hard-hitting thing for a lot of people. I think I saw the footage of it was Christensen. You could see he was visibly affected by it, and he's a young guy. You know what I mean? He's only 23, 24, I think. So again, it does have a big impact on you, especially when it's your friend and you're sitting watching it happening unfold before your eyes.
So James.
I was going to just pick up on the point about Schmeichel, because Schmeichel did a podcast, BBC one with Dan Walker, and it's all about leadership and excelling in sport. And they did talk about the helicopter crash that he was one of the first people to respond to and see. And he just talked about how, in a weird way, the stress and the horror brought people together and created a bond that he just doesn't feel in any other club. And I think that will be very similar to these Danish players and staff, that they'll just bond in a way that most international teams do not bond, because they just don't play often enough to bond. But these players have went through something pretty traumatic together, emotional strain, and to their credit, they themselves, the players, said that they want to finish the game.
So that's got into my next point, because obviously bringing them together is great, but they lost the game. which you look at the rankings, which I try never to look at, but I keep meaning to speak about. Finland are way down there. Denmark are one of the very high up teams. Should the game have went ahead, should the game have played in its entirety, is that an emotional choice that they've made at the time because they've wanted to make and they weren't actually emotionally stable at the point to be making that decision?
From what I've heard, and it's unconfirmed reports as far as I'm aware, is that Eriksen, once he was stable, had a call, FaceTime, or whatever, to his teammates and asked them to finish the game. So if that is true, it makes it a bit more acceptable. But I don't think you can ever justify the game finishing to its completion because there's no way the players would be in the right mindset to continue the game, especially after witnessing something like that.
And James, we spoke about it as well with the position on the park that's having to concentrate the most on the game, and Schmeichel's made a mistake for the goal, and Finland win 1-0.
Yeah, I do think there was certainly an element of emotional reaction when something tragic happens, you want to just continue doing what you were doing to distract yourself, but you're not emotionally ready to do it. Saying that, Denmark were the better team in the second.
Yes.
They created the better chances and should have won the game from the chances created. Finland had one shot and scored from it. So 9 times out of 10, Denmark would have went on to win that game. And if they won the game, would people have been saying they weren't emotionally ready?
Yeah.
To play the game. It's a difficult one. Who makes the decisions? Usually, you'd say the players should make the decision. They made the decision, and they lost. But in the end of things, it doesn't really matter that they lost. No. The fact that Christian Eriksen is stable and seems to be in the early stages of recovery, that's the main thing.
Yeah. I think when it happened, you sort of looked at it and thought, well, that game's never getting finished. They're going to have to find another day somewhere to get that game played. If he survives, or if he didn't survive, I would have well expected Denmark to pull out the tournament. Well, I wouldn't have been overly surprised if they had. I probably would expect them to continue, but I wouldn't have been surprised if they sort of just said, we're pulling out. But it is one of these things. It's like the Olympics. Obviously, this is every 2 years, but this is the highest you can sort of achieve every fourth year for the Euros. But all these players are there and they're wanting to compete and they want to win. You can understand them wanting to play. But I can't agree with finishing the game. My main issue with finishing the game is obviously there's so much of a build up to a game. Every team's got their build up. You have your meal, you have this, you have that. You set out. You've got your warm up for a certain length of time. So I don't know what length of time they were given to be told, right? If any of them had started getting their clothes off or anything, right? Get your stuff back on. We're going to go have another warm up. We're going to play 4 minutes and have a 5-minute break. The first 4 minutes were extremely muted. So on a physical side of things, after being prepared for the game, playing your 41 minutes, having to stop, obviously having the emotional episode within that, that's obviously draining on your physical self, and then having to go through it again, then have another build up and do it again. Physically, they would have been better having it another day, finding a space for it somewhere, in my opinion.
The argument could be drawn out that Belgium could have been impacted.
Yep.
Vertonghen, former teammate, Lukaku, current teammate. They would have heard that news a couple of hours before the game, whilst they're prepping. and yeah, they would have a deep relationship with him, and that would have had a big impact on them. So, would the Belgium game have to be postponed? Would subsequent games have to be postponed as the tournament goes on? And these decisions.
Now, if he had died, I think that probably would have happened. I think he would have stopped football completely that day, and sort of tried to rearrange stuff. I know that wasn't obviously if he had died. I don't think Lukaku would have played later on that day, and I don't think the ex-Spurs players would have played either. But I think UEFA, I'm assuming they would have a protocol for things like this, a worst case scenario for everything they'll have to have in their depths. So it's a difficult one for everybody to everybody close to Eriksen to deal with.
Yep.
The other thing I want to mention is Finland. Finland, who done extremely well, and I think they tried everything they could to help Denmark. Even the goal that they scored, the celebration was extremely muted. I think there was a little bit more celebration at the full-time whistle, but that's no more than can be expected. I can't see them going through it in the later stages, though. They're not a great team.
I wouldn't think so, but it's as you say, like because of the way that they celebrated, I think, and the way that they handled the whole situation, I would say a lot of people's respect for them has increased, and they could possibly put themselves as being one of the favourites with the neutrals because of that. Same with Denmark as well, because of the incident. I could big up a lot of support. It'll be people with having a wee maybe an inkling of supporting Denmark in the back of their head, or even Finland because of how well they handled the situation.
Yeah. I think that's basically covered everything on the subject. Anybody want to say anything else on the game?
Glenn Kamara is a very good player. £50,000 from Dundee was an absolute steal for Rangers.
Coming from a Celtic fan is a big thing.
Yeah.
The problem a lot of teams have is players like that. I think he's linked to Brighton. I think the commentator said that during the game. So I think that'll be a big money move. I can't see Rangers letting them go cheap. Go down there to deal with Graham Potter.
I think that's one of those that if Basuma goes to Arsenal, like he's been linked with, I think he could be an ideal replacement for that sort of role.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had a very good game. But I think the only thing that's left to say on this topic from us is that in case Christian Eriksen happens to watch this and is stumbling across us, we wish him the
one
best.
Of our recovery. 3 listeners.
We wish him the best and a speedy recovery. And I think that's football fans as a whole have to say that. But for us, in terms of the Euros, we need to not dwell on this.
Great player as well.
But definitely. Definitely.
A player really enjoyed watching it. There's always something in the game. Hopefully, with the injury, with the thing that was, he's able to go back to football. I've not actually seen any reports on whether he will be able to or won't be able to. But hopefully he does. Hopefully he can.
One thing that was always underestimated in his game, he was brilliant at set pieces, brilliant vision, but his work rate was incredible. He was always at the top end of the distance covered.
It was very like David Beckham in that sense, because David Beckham's work rate was immense, but always ever remembered for was his ability to take set pieces.
Yeah. And yes, I had many good fun years watching Christian Eriksen play for Spurs. He was my favourite player for Spurs when he was there. And we had some very good players when he was in the team. So that shows you how good a football player he was. And hopefully still is.
No, definitely. And I do think we need to try and not dwell on this as football fans. especially us, the nation of Scotland. Big game tomorrow, ending a 23-year-long wait to play in a major competition. But someone else who's had a very long wait has been James, and waiting the 105 days, agonisingly, sitting there helpless, sometimes wanting to run into the woods and hide from what is life of being a Celtic fan. But 105 days, appointment of the new manager, who we here at Sports Hut Podcast is dubbed the Postie. But the question is, James, will the Postie be able to deliver?
I think he will. I think he'll come to Parkhead and create a Xanadu. I think it will be an absolutely incredible scene. The Wizard of Oz coming to Parkhead. His style of football is very attacking, very aggressive. I think he'll create a lot of memories in Parkhead. I remember Parkhead's atmosphere. There's not many times that the hairs on the back of my neck have stood up. One time was when I was at Broadway watching Phantom of the Opera, when the chord struck. But every other time has been at Parkhead with the Thunder. And I hope Big Ange brings it back. But he is unknown to lots of people in Scottish football. I've watched a lot of podcasts of him, so I think I know him so well. But not a lot of people do know about him. And the first glimpse that they had was an interview he did on Celtic TV. So did any of you be able to catch the interview?
Yes, I did. I can understand why he was appointed. I think he came across in the interview very well. I think I don't know. I think he just thought like Ken, it was my shot. Ken, it was his chance to go and do it. It's obviously a big step up from where he's been. But he came across in the interview extremely well. It's a difficult one. Having an interview and coming across extremely well is completely different to actually producing it on pitch. I've not seen enough of what he's done on the pitch, what managerial style he's got. I've only really heard about what he's said and what he's talked about. And yes, he does talk extremely well. He talks about a brand new football that most fans want to see. Jury's still out.
Yeah, yes. It was light at the end of the tunnel for us Celtic fans. But he is, as you say, an unknown quantity. Some might say just City. But Gavin, did you catch the interview?
Thankfully, because of your amazing sharing skills, I managed to have a nosy at it, which I thank you very much for. But he presents himself very well. He does come across, as Martin said, a very good talker. He knows what he's talking about, which is a big thing, especially after the difficult time that Celtic and their fans have had with the breakdown in communications and contract talks between other managers who've been linked, such as Eddie Howe, because that seems like a done deal.
Who?
Eddie Howe, you know.
Never heard of him.
I feel like a lot of Celtic fans would have loved to have been in the room where that happened, where the talks happened, to try and get the ins and outs of why it broke down. But it does seem like the Postie could be a very good appointment, especially for having some entertaining. He says he likes the entertainers, the ones who are there to get the fans value for money. He also mentioned quite a lot of young players as well, and talking about getting academy work, and I know that's something that you've mentioned, James, using the academy, so he does seem to have a good idea at the moment.
Yeah, I think
the big question, James, is: are you satisfied?
Yes, I would say I am satisfied. I've listened not only to the Celtic TV interview but the podcast, and he does play with electricity. That's his philosophy, attacking football. But the one thing that I would say is every club that he's went to, he's took about 6 months to implement his vision. Celtic fans will demand immediate success, but the board appointed him with his track record, and the board need to stand by him in those 6 months. In 6 weeks, we're going to be playing Champions League qualifiers. and we get either 3 teams. It's Galatasaray, Rapid Vienna, or FC Midtjylland from Denmark. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that correctly. But they are.
I think I was close.
They are 3 good European teams similar to Celtic's level. So he's going to be thrown right into the deep end, potentially without Ayer, potentially without Edward, no Scott Brown,
Not a big loss.
but no right back.
Yeah.
No left back because Greg Taylor. A goalkeeper. Centre back. Julian's coming back after 9 months out. A left winger. Mikey Johnson's spent a whole year injured on the sidelines. Right winger. James Forrest spent a whole year injured on the sidelines. Christie may not even be there. So who's our team?
I think that's the thing. I mean, is he going to be there for good? Probably not. I mean, he's only going to be there for a certain length of time anyway. Whether he can actually do it in 6 months and change it. But you spoke before about the amount of players that he needs to bring in. But all he can do is go into the training camp, see the players that are there, and try to coach them into his style of football, which is a difficult thing to do when you want to be bringing your players in. I would expect him to make 6, 7 signings at least. And the players that are already there, he'll have to go in and say to them, all I can ask of you is to jump on board and go with his philosophy and try their best to understand what he's trying to do. It's easier for the players that he's bringing in, because the players that he's bringing in for a reason. He's got roles for them. He's bringing them in because they fit in his philosophy. It's how many players that are already there, even the good players, if they fit in with his philosophy or not.
But we've had 9 years of unprecedented success for Celtic. Year 10 was like a long-drawn requiem. This year is finished for Celtic. And
James, see this 10, go and just let it go. just let it go.
Big Ange will be coming in. The team will be leaving, and he will be saying, "Who's the superstar I can build the team around?" And I think that player will be David Turnbull. I think David Turnbull will be the centre of the spine of the team. And as a Celtic fan, wouldn't it be lovely if Callum McGregor got back to form? Because Turnbull, Sorrell and McGregor, that's not a bad midfield. And I think it would be good to build.
Over the past year or two, have Celtic got a history of the wrong guys? Just bringing the wrong people in, or do you think they've just not settled? Or
that's a good question, because that comes into the point I was about to make about James is saying he normally takes 6 months or so to implement his style. If the Celtic fans will want immediate success. If he gets it wrong, or he gets a few bad results in those 6 months, Celtic fans will come at him with guns and ships, a barrage of attacks. Yeah. Will the board and the fans give him time, or will it be an agony for Celtic fans to have to go through all this again? But another thing we said about his interview, and he seems to have a lot of encouragement for younger players, exciting young players. I feel like Johnson could have a good spell under him, but will there be players in the youth academy turning around saying, "Ange, take a chance on me. I can go out there. I can show you what I can do." And will they get the opportunities?
I think Karamoko Dembele obviously stands out. He has been highly.
He's been on the brink for years, though. He was playing first team like end of the season at 16, and he just disappears, and then it's the end of the season again. He gets a couple of games, then disappears. End of the season, gets a couple of games.
He was playing under 21 level at 14 years old.
Yeah, I was saying at the age of 13, he was defying gravity, and the expectation has caught up to him. And now we don't know if he. One thing is that he's not the most muscular person. He's very small physically frame, and sometimes on the pitch with the senior players, he looks a little bit helpless. But maybe bulking up a little bit, a new manager coming in, which should play a style of football that suits him. Ange likes to play a 4-2-3-1 with two inverted wingers. Dembele is an inverted winger, right to left. So it could work.
Surely he's going to be knocking on the door and just saying, look, this is me, this is what I can do, field me, and we'll see how we get on.
Well,
he is that good.
He
There's nobody saying he isn't.
He is very good. But I don't know. Maybe Ange will tongue round to him and say, you're in the band. Or maybe you'll send him out on loan for a year to get him some physicality.
That probably help. At lower league football, even championship or lower divisions in England, would probably help.
Yeah.
With what he's required to get to.
Yes.
And then after that, you can just bring him home, and that would hopefully give him a chance to excel from there. I mean, it's happened. I can only speak about the Hibs players, but I can remember Kenny Miller went on loan at Stenhousemuir and scored 5 goals, and then Hibs had them for a while before they went on to Rangers. And most of the top players that came through the youth academy at Hibs have had a good spell out on loan somewhere.
Yeah. When they go on loan, they have to seize the day.
Yeah.
If they don't succeed on loan, then that's their chance of promoting to the first team over and done with. But to conclude this Celtic Cup, I'm just going to do a very quick fire round, which is, will Ange be a success at Celtic based on the interview? It's not a lot to base it off, but his track record and the interview. He has won the league in Australia, and in Japan, and led the team to the World Cup against the odds. So will he be a success at Celtic? Will he stop 56?
That's a hard one. I mean, of just one interview, will he be Celtic's rocket man? Take them to the moon? I mean, it's definitely a hard one. But off the interview, he's very positive. He wanted, from what I've heard and read, he wanted to speak to fans as soon as possible, which is a good thing to try and get them on side, especially after the lengthy delay. I mean, I don't really think James could have took 1 day more of waiting for an appointment. So I think he has everything he needs to succeed. Just needs some backing and a bit of investment on top of what he already has. But I think it will be an interesting season, definitely, next year.
Martin?
This is a bit over the rainbow stuff. It's trying to figure out what he's doing on not a lot of information. For what he's talking about and the players he's got at his disposal, I'd agree it's going to take him 6 months to actually, and a couple of transfer windows to achieve what he's wanting to achieve if he's good. I can't see him hitting the ground running with it. Hopefully Bruce never sees this, but I can't see Celtic winning the league next year. If they're going to go a complete change of style, player, everything, because he does need 10 players in, and it will come down to how he does in the first 7, 8, 10 games, and if he can win a high percentage of those, then I might be able to win the league. But I can't see them being able to change tactic. You look at Pep Guardiola when he went in at Man City. First couple of years, it took him a while to actually get the players and get this Pep Guardiola, somebody who's spoke about as one of the best managers in the world. I do see him actually succeeding at Celtic, but not straight away.
What I liked about his interview, just before you say move on, James, is that he talked about his family, which obviously in any job is a big thing. And for him to mention about his family being supportive and moving with him. But what he needs to remember is it's not going to be a jolly holiday. He needs to be there and get them off and running from the start. Because if not, they're going to be broken and just be sitting there for vultures to prey on, feeding the birds that are going to be going about, and especially some of the results they had against some poorer opposition last season. He does have a big job, which cannot be understated at all.
I think that's a good point, but he has moved from Australia to Japan to a culture where he doesn't speak the language, and his family's went through a big transition, and probably a bigger transition than this is because of the language barrier. So I think he'll do well. I do think he'll take time for his style to implement, but I think that comes with the man, and I think the board have to stick with him if results are not necessarily there at the beginning. But I do think it's good that Scott Brown isn't there. Scott Brown is a very big personality, and I think Ange coming in to Scottish football, there would have been a confrontation with Scott Brown straight away. The coach
is this kind of like Barry Ferguson and Paul Le Guen?
Yeah, kind of that. I think, yes, Scott Brown not being there just creates a fresh environment. Same with Peter Lawwell, with his leaving at the end of the month. Don Mackay, Ange can come in, appoint his own captain, and set things his own way. And I think when he's in quarantine after he leaves Japan, he just needs to ask himself, who am I? What do I want to do for Celtic? What philosophy do I want? And these questions he already knows the answers to. And I think he needs to be realistic. I think Celtic fans need to be realistic.
That's not happening.
No, it's not happening. Celtic fans are castle on the cloud stuff, just thinking that I dream a dream and something will be pulled out of thick air.
Celtic fans think that they've got a manager and suddenly everything's going to make sense and it's going to work.
I think you look back at managers like Gordon Strachan. His first game was a 5-0 defeat in Europe.
Marta Bratislava, yes.
Yeah, and I thought James will probably correct me. I think he'd done pretty well as a manager for them. But at that point, I think James is going to correct me on this. I quite like Gordon Strachan, so I didn't actually ken Celtic's experience.
He was at Celtic a season too long. I had a party when he left. But he won a treble and did well. The final season was a bit boring. But yeah, Celtic fans tend to look down on people they don't know. He's not a Celtic man in the sense of brought up in Scottish football or has an Irish passport. But I think he's got a big enough personality to come to Scotland, to come to Glasgow and make himself the master of the house. But before I go on,
so the interview that he said though, he was talking an awful lot about Australian nationals that he paid attention to. Yep. Does this mean that Celtic are going to have a look at Martin Boyle?
We don't know.
Who you've said that needs a winger, and it's got a release clause of 500,000.
I think we'll be looking maybe at Martin Boyle, but I think the Japanese market. There's a couple coming up in Japan who I have absolutely no clue about. I'm going to be honest about, but
it's an awesome market for you to actually dip into though, because if they do well, then the club can make a fortune of them just through merchandising deals.
So we've seen that with Celtic before when Nakamura though, so.
Aye.
Yes, but if it doesn't work out,
Huey Dewey.
Yeah, Dewey from China.
That's the one. That's the one.
But yeah, if it doesn't work out, empty chairs at empty tables, and we're in this this time next year. But if it does work, it could be a masterstroke, and we could be on to the start of something. So we'll see. And I'll leave it at that.
So James hoping that Ange, accompanied by the new hierarchy at Celtic, has the golden tickets to all of his desires. But speaking of hierarchy, Martin's not so keen. Speaking of a hierarchy, it brings us quite well into our third topic. We're going to discuss briefly group ownership. It seems to be something that's becoming a lot more renowned in football. You've got big organisations such as Red Bull, the City Football Group, which has now came into its own after the acquisition of Manchester City, and we've seen a lot of bigger teams picking up weaker teams. This is something that's happened for a long time in terms of there's always been affiliate clubs. Two ones that spring to my mind is Manchester United having an affiliate with Antwerp. I think it was Royal Antwerp, and Chelsea had an affiliate with Vitesse Arnhem in the Netherlands, and both of which are still ongoing in terms of players going on loan and such. But the probably most recent kind of lower league one was, if you remember correctly, would be the Udinese acquisition of Watford, where Watford were bought over for 500,000, and have recently, I think it was 2 years ago, the owner turned down an offer of almost 350 million for them. So it shows you a great exponential growth. But why do we think that this is becoming a much bigger area of focus? You know, the Red Bull Group own Leipzig, Salzburg, New York, and Red Bull Bragantino in Brazil, as well as all their secondary teams.
I think they were looking at Rangers at one point as well, and they realised that they were the fans were zombies, so decided against it.
It's one of the things, in my opinion, like Red Bull obviously have used it for advertisement purposes to get the name and the brand into places that they have been struggling with in the past, such as Brazil, Austria, and the City Group are just kind of flexing their muscles, in my opinion. But they've got a lot of teams under their umbrella. I think they've only one away from having a team in each continent, which is Africa, that they're missing out on. But they do also have the
team
academy.
Unless they've got one in Antarctica, pretty difficult.
The team that Ange came from was part of the City Group.
Yes, that's a very good point as well. The Yokohama Marinas, I believe.
As was the team that Ronnie Dyler came from.
The Yokohama Marinas City. I think they've changed most of the teams to City, apart from Yokohama Marinas, obviously.
No, Girona as well haven't changed, but that's a good thing. They have rebranded a lot of their teams, dealing with the Red Bull to match the branding. The style of play seems to be quite similar as well. So what do you think about this becoming a much more prominent feature in modern day football? Is it something we agree with, or is it just, again, money talking, similar to the European Super League?
Well, I think in the case of Man City, it's a bit of a masquerade. It is all for the benefit of Man City. Now, you've got to remember that Man City are owned by a state. A country owns them. And this country is using Manchester City as soft power to make their country more appealing on the international stage. Saying, look at the good that we do in Manchester, building...
And launder money.
Building all these great facilities, investing into the community. But Man City also are the focal club of this project, the City Club. Whereas with Red Bull, it's slightly different. Red Bull, they have, each team is seen of equal importance to them. Salzburg and Leipzig are the two that come to mind. But they are Leipzig's the better team, but they're probably of equal importance to Red Bull. And that's for advertising purposes. But both of them are for advertising. One's just for a private company and one's for a country. And that's where we're getting to. Football clubs being used as soft power tools for other purposes. But we're past the point of no return on this. We saw Saudi Arabia trying to buy Newcastle. It's just countries investing. You can even say Chelsea. Mr. Abramovich is very good friends with Mr. Putin. And you'll see Chinese investment coming in, more Middle East investment coming in. It's just the way football's going. And I think we need to be careful about that, because most of these regimes, the people might be fine, but the money is not fine. The money comes from very dodgy places in most of these cases. So do we really want football to be funded by this? I would say no. Is football continue going to be funded like this? Yes.
I think what seems to be a trend at the moment is a lot of lower league teams across the world being bought over by these sort of franchise ideas. And as one thing that I've always thought about is like, if you win enough money in the lottery, my first thing is like, I'm going to buy a football team just for the sheer, fuck it, why not? See what happens. What do we think about it? Do you think it's just like boys with their toys with a bit of money thrown about?
It is to a degree, but it's been done, and it's the class in '82 bought Salford, and now everybody hates Salford because they're the team with all the money, and they're slowly progressing through the leagues, and they will be. I reckon there'll be a Premiership team at one point, maybe not in the next, maybe take 10, 15 years, but I think they'll slowly progress through the leagues. I think I'd be interested. I mean, you look at Gretna. Gretna was the same story. Guy bought Gretna. What was his name? Mileston. What was Gretna's other name?
You could say
Anyway,
Shahan Gohar, and I'd believe you.
So Shahan Gohar, he bought Gretna, and he got them all the way through. And I don't know how a team for the wrong side of Edinburgh managed to beat them in penalties one time, but they capitulated after that because the guy had a heart attack, I think, and the family were like, "Nah, we don't invest any money in that," and Gretna just ceased to exist. I think if you are going to invest in
the Gretna Football Club, don't disrespect them like that. Same club.
Gretna 2008.
Oh.
Yes, that's actually the
same club.
So, but, same issue.
Like Bruce over there, James.
There's an analogy for we're talking about Rangers, obviously. I always do. Have you ever seen Only Fools and Horses?
Yes.
So the Rangers fans have got this thing that they think Rangers is the same club. It's like Denzel with his brush. He's had the same brush for 18 years, but it's had 3 new handles and 4 new poles. That's kind of Rangers, not the same brush. So the
Circle of life.
Aye, circle of life. Aye.
Rangers. The Rangers.
So I think it's fine.
James, you're digressing.
I think it's fine to put money into teams and do that, but you have to have the structure. You have to first have the structure behind the team, make them self-sustainable, and then slowly progress them through. Because just throwing money at teams and put them through, you're then at the point of you step away, like Mr. Murray did, and then the whole team can fall completely. Romanov did the same thing, and you need to have a structure. And you're welcome. And you need to make sure that your club is self-sustainable to a degree. I mean, I think Man City have got that in line to a degree. I think there is money there, but they've got assets and they've got sustainability to a degree. I think Chelsea have done the same thing for the amount of players that they have. They've got 300 players in their first team squad or something.
I think it was the release list that went out. I think there's been something like 90 contract renewals for the first team, which I'm sitting there like, what? 90? How is that even possible? 90. There's been 90 renewals. What seems to be a big factor in these group ownership in terms of multiple teams and multiple leagues. There seems to be a system used for loaning players. We saw it with Jack Harrison at Man City. He went to New York City. Same with Lampard, actually. The same. He signed a contract with New York City before they became a team, but then actually signed for Manchester City on loan first of all. Do we think that this is something that is beneficial for younger players, or do we think that it's a case of the teams will be sitting there getting greedy, saying, "Give me, what another player," and then using that way to buy themselves the titles?
Drink just appeared.
I want to get one of them.
Well, any dream will do.
Yeah.
No, I think Celtic have benefited from it, even though we're not part of the City group. We've had Bayata, we've had Patrick Roberts, we've had Jason Denayer,
Arzani.
Gianni Guidetti. So we're going
How did they work for you?
mixed. Patrick Roberts was a success first season. Bayata played well. Denayer played well. Guidetti so-so. But no, I think these things are fine. The benefit that Man City has with these clubs is that the managers of the other teams are being told to play a certain way. So these players can go on loan to teams that will play similarly to Man City to make the transition from those teams to first team very smooth. And I think that's the point of these clubs. Build the brand and to help get players playing the Man City way in competitive games from a young age. I don't see anything wrong with that, but there does come a point where if these teams were to meet in European competitions, say Red Bull, Leipzig and Salzburg got drawn with each other, how does that play out?
It kind of gets into your Formula One sort of stance. I just built it aside, let somebody else pass. I think when you look at especially when you look at your Red Bull teams, I mean, they all have the same blueprint. They're all young teams. They're all young managers. They're all dynamic football. They're all they all want to do the same thing. So I can see the benefits of doing it that way.
It's one of those things that's becoming the whole feeder club, if you want to use that as a bracket. Well, when they're sitting smiling away. But yeah, the feeder club sort of way, but also in terms of players, it works well. But it's not only that; it works well for managers. So, and to use Red Bull as an example here, Leipzig, I think was it Nagelsmann, who's just announced that he's going to Bayern Munich.
Yep.
So Leipzig without manager, but the young American who was manager of Salzburg is now taking over the helmet at Leipzig as of next season. So it makes it easier for recruitment in terms of all the teams play the same way. They all have similar sort of age range, young players, attacking team. It makes it easier in terms of that sense for finding the correct man, and it doesn't take 105 days like some teams. Do we think that as a young up and coming manager, it's a good system to be a part of?
I think so. I think you look at. I mean, you look at the issues that Celtic had with getting a manager. If they had a feeder club that had a good manager, it'd be an easy acquisition for them.
We do need a cup. It's called Hibernian. Just decent.
Unfortunately, Jack Ross isn't up to it, obviously.
Jack Ross hasn't got a very good discipline, mannerism when it comes to dealing with contentious hierarchy.
Only outside elevators. So if you look at a lot of the points here, it is handy to have feeder clubs that you can dip into, especially if you're playing the same style of football. You're short of a right back. Hopefully, feeder club there's got an extremely good right back. Instead of selling the right back to Man United or Man City, they could take it one step up, play for Celtic for a bit, and then after that, will make more money because he's playing at a higher level.
Frimpong, another one.
Yeah.
I mean, we are part of the City group. We're just not part of it formally. And the reason for that is that Peter Lawwell's son's a scout for Man City.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I didn't actually know that, James, so you've enlightened me.
Yeah, there you go, an exclusive that is already publicly known for this podcast.
I didn't even know that. But so just to kind of round off this topic, obviously James is saying that he doesn't agree with it in terms of he doesn't know where the money's coming from all the time. But it does seem like the way forward for a lot a lot of teams. Do we think that this is going to be a bigger feature, more prominent in football, across the higher leagues, especially?
I think so. I think there's a lot of soft power in football. Everyone knows the 20 teams in the Premier League, I would say. And even if you couldn't name them, you recognise the badge if it came up. So if that name is associated with a famous badge, you're going to increase your output. Unless you do a Man United protest and say no products associated with this club whilst wearing Adidas hoodies, which is quite a protest.
Lovely. Well thought out.
Well, extremely well thought out. But yeah, I think only certain people can afford these clubs. You have to have a lot of money in the bank or a lot of loans to afford these clubs. And then two, who is actually going to be interested in it? Because it is, for the most part, a loss-making business. And it is going to be people with a wider agenda rather than football. But the one downside, and we've not talked about this yet, is fan ownership or fan involvement. Fans are pushed aside when it comes to this, because it is the promoting of Red Bull, the promoting of Abu Dhabi. That comes first, not the philosophy of the fans. And if things don't go well for the club, would the fans support it? The two examples that you've used have worked. Man City are there about falling at the final hurdle, and Red Bull are improving, both the Red Bull teams. So that they've been successes. But if Red Bull start to fall off or Man City start to fall off, will the fans actually appreciate it? Interesting hypothesis.
I've got a lot of issues with it, especially if the people that are buying a lot of the top clubs. The only aspect that I see working is if you're buying clubs at all different levels. So you've got a money-making club up at the top of the leagues, and you're also buying lower division teams. I think I wouldn't want to stop lower division teams getting money in, because obviously these lower division teams don't make a lot of money, any money. They're loss makers mostly, and it is extremely difficult for the fans to put money into them because there's not a great deal of them. So I do think I wouldn't want to say that I don't want a investment into small clubs, because I think investment is required within small clubs to keep them going. Bigger clubs, not so much. I think there is, rightly so, certain loops you have to jump through to get to own a club. I think Newcastle fans will know all about that now. They're almost getting bought by Saudi Arabia or whoever it was. But so yes, at a high level, I would restrict it a lot. At lower level, at loss-making clubs, I would encourage it. I understand there's a lot of clubs that are their breadline. They're trying their best to stay afloat and struggling mostly. And I think they need help. It's not the top of the tree; it's the roots that need the help.
Kevin, you were talking about the lottery, and if you won the lottery, you want to buy a football club. So say you had all this money lying about. What team would you buy if it wasn't Hearts? You go, can't buy Hearts.
If it wasn't Hearts.
Can't buy Hearts.
Okay.
Who would you buy?
I think I would go for a local club. Something like Falkirk, Stirling Albion in the Shire, Lithgow, Rose, Bo'ness United, one of those local, as Martin says, lower league clubs. Because at the end of the day, that is where you need the improvement and investment, as he says. That's what I think anyway. If I could afford a bigger club, obviously you're going to make more money, so it's a bit more sustainable. But I think it's definitely those levels that need the investment, or I'll just do a a dream team and create my own football team and just pay my way into the leagues.
Well, you found a goalkeeper and a centre back. Hazard, I think, is looking for a job, and I think Orlando's not too bad.
Who would you buy if you couldn't buy Hibs?
I'd
You'd buy Hearts and
them
try and
right
put us into
the
financial
sorry.
ruin.
Right. What? Mere financial ruin that you saw again? No,
we're not Rangers. We are actually sustainable.
It's debatable. I probably have to agree with Gabby. I'd want to go through the league. I'd want a fairy tale underdog story. You want Camelin Juniors or Ken, somebody from that ilk, somebody right down the table, somebody in Lowlands League that you could then take up to the top of the league, win promotion, and sort of build up from there. And hopefully one day get to the sort of the heights of the Champions League, which would be great. But I think that's the way you'd have to go. You wouldn't want to buy a Premiership team and try to change them. You'd want to start lower league and build a lower league team and take them right to the top.
James, what about yourself? If it couldn't be Celtic or Spurs?
I would.
Or Rangers. Get a pound. Unless you've got a spare couple of quid.
Ackridge and Stanley.
Ackridge and Stanley. Who are they?
Exactly, who are they? I think growing up, they were the team that it was always a challenge on FIFA or Football Manager to get to the Premier League with them. And I would buy the club and I would appoint myself director of football.
As you do, yeah.
I would just have a Football Manager reality and see if I can make the miracle happen in real life. It would be good fun.
James sitting there like that Chinese owner who bought a team and told the manager he had to play.
Oh, got his laddie to play.
Yeah. Don't.
It was actually not too bad. He had a couple of decent touches. He just didn't look the part at all. Took all the corners, took all the free kicks.
Don't write me off. I could make you the managerial staff. But
James, you've got sense, so why would you? That's a very good question that you asked, all that, James, and I think it's kind of brought the.
Did you just say Tory had sense?
I know. I can't believe it myself. But you've kind of rounded it off very well there.
Oh, there you go.
I do think so, but I think this brings us very nicely onto our usual round table segment of the night, and we've mentioned before on here about the players, a lot of camaraderie, banging their heads to Bohemian Rhapsody. Tomorrow we'll be doing this one, getting behind the Scots. The question
He's all watching the game?
Of course. My work's made an arrangement where we're going to be able to get the game on, so whether it's on a TV or a tablet or one of our screens where we're working, it's going to be on.
James?
I'm working. But I'm working from home.
You're working from home?
Winner.
I'm self-employed. I'm taking the afternoon off.
I made sure not to arrange any Zoom meetings for that time.
I think it's one of those, it's an emotional moment for many people, especially it being the once in a lifetime thing. I've never seen Scotland play in a major tournament. I'm assuming James has never seen them play in a major tournament either. Martin, you have because you're an old
I'm
man.
old, I have.
But like
Tommy Boyd, the prick.
I was trying to explain it to my eldest.
Oh, don't.
Like, stop digressing now. I was trying to explain this to my eldest son about how much it means to a lot of people, and how I do feel like there's going to be a lot of people getting emotional over this moment. It is a kind of potentially once in a generation opportunity.
So we'll be doing it in a couple of years then.
Oh, if that's the way that Scotland want to work, then that's the way Scotland want to work. But for the round table, what I want to do is go along with the theme of the tell me you're Scottish without telling me you are Scottish. So James, be our guest. Go first.
Well, I've been drinking Iron Brew the whole podcast, so that's probably a giveaway.
Still on the podcast.
a more serious one is that 2 weeks of school was compulsory Ceilidh dancing lessons for PE. Strip the Willow, the Jordans, the Canadian Burn Dance. I could do them all. I don't know who made that policy. It's something like Alexander Hamilton would have introduced in the US when he was writing the Constitution. You have to do 2 weeks of Ceilidh dancing to promote culture. But there you go. I was, yeah. That's how I'm Scottish.
I can't remember any of that. I know I did it all. All the key Gordons and everything. I could not remember any of the steps anymore. If I went to Ceilidh, I'd have to
Who's Gordon and why are you ridiculing him like that, Martin?
Hit me with your first shot. Why don't you? That's a knockout blow. Can you?
This is one of those awkward moments in the podcast where changing the camera because the battery's running low. A child gets handed to another member. All fun and games here. So, Martin, tell me you're Scottish without telling me you're Scottish.
Can I get for the chippy? Pizza crunch.
Fair enough.
That's enough. I thought I think I spoke about in the podcast before with the Aston Villa team were all talking about what their favourite foods were, and you'd have all the Spanish guys saying all this bruschetta and this and a wee bit of balsamic vinegar and chicken and all that, and then you'd have the Portuguese come and do it with the same stuff, and then John McGinn would jump in with chips.
Have you seen the Andy Murray one at Wimbledon?
No.
Where obviously it's strawberries and cream at Wimbledon. That's the whole story. So they go through the tennis players from Djokovic, Serena Williams, and they go, "What do you eat how do you eat strawberries?" And then all of the players for about 2 minutes say, "With cream." And then it gets to Andy Murray and he just goes, "Wave our fingers."
Typical Scottish response. Definitely. So Martin, your pizza crunch.
Pizza crunch,
man.
That's extremely easy.
I'm going to go along the same lines.
I also one of my favourite songs at Hampden, but I experienced it on the back of a bus, was when we played against Italy, and we sang to the Italians, "Deep fry your pizzas. We're going to deep fry your pizzas."
I remember when it was the Euros was in Austria and we were trying to qualify, and Scotland fans were singing "Do a Dear," a female.
Yeah, we've sung that for years. I've sung that in. I went to a home game against Macedonia or something, and the only reason I know "Do a Dear" is because obviously the hit from Sound of Music, and the only reason I know it's because I've been having a couple of times in Scotland.
Let's start at the very beginning and ask Gavin, tell me you're Scottish without telling me you're Scottish.
I'm going to go along the same lines as Martin and say the only Mars bar I eat is deep fried. It's probably one of the most common dishes. Have you ever tried a deep fried Boost bar?
No, I've tried a Mars bar. To be fair, I only actually tried a Mars bar about a year ago for the first time. It's not just so I consider myself Scottish now.
It's a bit sickly after a while.
A couple of months ago. I've never felt so sick after it.
Deep fried Mars bar, the way forward.
Deep fried Mars bar.
Deep fried Mars bar, deep fried Boost bar, deep fry everything. We're Scottish. Deep fried can of Iron Brew.
I'm surprised nobody said their national animal's a unicorn.
A very good point as well.
It's a pretty unique animal. It's not even real.
Hey, I've seen one.
Whoa. Just because they put on a bit of weight and they move to Africa doesn't mean they're not real. Poor rhinos.
I didn't know that unicorns had a mass migration to Africa.
Well, only some of them. The rest of them, they grew fins and they moved sort of the Nordic region.
Got you. Evolution.
Yeah, evolution by process, natural selection.
And hopefully nature selects Scotland to win the Euros. So, but I think that's all we have time for this evening. We need to have faith. If you don't have faith, you don't have anything. But I do think that brings us towards the end.
Good comment. That's a good comment.
Yeah, you're welcome, mate. I want to just say thank you to everyone for tuning in and listening, viewing. Hopefully you all enjoy watching a Scotland victory. If not, you'll see us here next week crying, despairing.
Well, by this time next year, we'll have played 2 games.
Next week's not next year, mate.
Next week. Okay.
2 games, yeah, that's a good point. So we'll know if we've had a chance to qualify or not. So, but all that's left to say from us is thank you very much for listening, and hope you have a good time.
Yes, sir. I can boogie.
The Sports Hub Podcast.
I can boogie, 'cause I need a certain song.